It's well known. It's a well-known issue that African Americans, black people in America, so-called, don't know their history, that they're cut off from the history of Africa, and even the history of everything that they did and everything that was done to them in America. That's why you have Black History Month, right? So this is something that everyone knows about. Everyone is aware of this issue. But the truth is that so-called white people don't know their history either. Their history in America or their history in Europe. Americans generally don't know history, which is incredibly useful when you consider the fact that history repeats itself. It's incredibly useful to keep the entire population in a state of amnesia, so that the whole country operates like the main character in that film Memento, you know? So you keep doing the same things that you've always done, and you never understand that you're actually doing the things that history has already judged to be crimes. You understand? You can do it as if there's no context, as if there's no history, as if there's no pattern. That's the whole point of approaching current events from an ahistorical perspective. You don't want anyone to see the pattern. You want to be able to do things that have already been condemned by history, but you want to keep doing them anyway, as if you don't know that they're contemptible. You don't know that they are condemned actions. Just like Donald Trump now invoking the Alien Enemies Act in reference to mass deportations and so on. Okay, this is the same act that put tens of thousands of Japanese Americans into internment camps in World War II, and for which the United States government eventually had to provide compensation and eventually had to even apologize for doing it. You see, it is something completely contemptible that you did, but you want to repeat it. So you forget your history. You forget history so you can repeat history without blame. Both so-called white people and so-called black people in America don't know their history. Both have been told lies about the past, about their respective pasts. And the only reason for that is for the purpose of maintaining the continuity of the contemptible reality of how that society operates. Amnesia and fictional histories serve as a preventative measure against change, against reform, against rehabilitation. America chooses to live like it's in the movie Groundhog Day. You know, you pretend that only today exists over and over and over again. And because of this forced amnesia, because of this deliberate suppression of historical awareness, the people in America don't even recognize when they're reliving their own past. They think that they're facing something new. They think that they're responding to some unprecedented crisis every time. If you have no recollection where the road leads that you're on, then you'll keep walking it again and again, never realizing that it has already led you into disaster after disaster, dozens of times before. And this is exactly the condition that the rulers in America want, that the elite of America want, not just for black people, not just for so-called white people, but for everyone. Because the most effective way to ensure that a crime continues is to make sure that it is never recognized as a crime. To make sure that every time you commit that crime, it feels like the first time. You know? So when Trump talks about invoking the Alien Enemies Act, most Americans don't hear the echoes of history from that. They don't hear the voices of the Japanese Americans who were dragged from their homes and put behind barbed wire for years and years. They don't remember that that country had to apologize for doing exactly what they're about to do again. The American mind resets every morning, and that's the perfect condition for those in power. Because if people really understood history, then they would recognize that nothing about the American system is accidental. Every aspect of it, from its racial hierarchies to its economic disparities to its unjust foreign policies, is simply the continuation of an old script, a script that has played out again and again.
Hey, what's up, fam? How you doing? I hope you're doing super great wherever you are. Another video by Shahid Bolson from Middle Nation. And one thing I like about Shahid Bolson from the Middle Nation is that he says the truth. And he says the truth the way it is, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be taking him anywhere for saying the truth. There's so much to learn. First, I like the fact that he highlights that the United States uses what is called historical revisionism to erase, to manipulate the minds of white people. Turns out that majority of white people don't even know their history. And this makes sense because the United States have made it possible for everyone to forget about their past. It's giving them what is called historical presentism. Like you live in the present. You know that you're great. You know that America, the United States is great. You know that you as a white person, you have the privilege. You know you as a white person, you are better than any black folk who was around. Instead of telling you the harsh realities of the white race. For example, as a person who is interested in history, if you ask me, take back during the times of the Vikings, you can look at the type of life that they were living. Honestly, if I were a white person today and a person comes to me with an argument that, we were people who civilized the world, we are the people, such people things. But I'll ask them, man, look at the lives of the Vikings, how they lived. These people killed each other. These people lived in the mud. These people were dirty. These people were nasty, right? They made love everywhere. Like it was like nothing. These people acted like animals. So you'll ask yourself, why is this happening? But due to media, which is always lying to people, for you to not even ask or question a lot of things in history, makes people forget that they were not great. Because majority of white folks have been sold the lie that they were great in history. History is telling them that, right? And what America is doing is called historical revisionism. Historical revisionism is that it whitewashes the true history and it fictionalizes the history and it gives you a story that is not true. It gives you a story that is more of lies. So while I watched this video, it was so eye-opening hearing the perspective of this professor himself trying to explain to us why white people don't know their history. And not only white people, he also says that black people we don't know our history because, and I agree with him because look, most of the history that was presented to black folks was all lie. And people had to re-educate themselves for them to know their true history. So I want us to watch this video. All credits to the Middle Nation. The presenter of this video is called Shahid Bolson from Middle Nation channel. Kindly go and check him out for what he's doing. So let's watch the video and I'll be back with my commentary. As usual, I prepared a research that I did on the same and we are going to have a discussion in regards to this. So let's watch the video and I'll be back.
Always leading to oppression, always leading to exploitation, always leading to war, always leading to misery. And this is why in America, history isn't taught. Fiction is taught, legends are taught, myths are taught, but not history. Because real history would be dangerous. Real history would break the illusion and potentially break the cycle. So-called white people in America know a version of history. They know a story. They know a narrative that has been carefully crafted to shape how they see themselves, how they see their ancestors, how they see their nations and their place in the world, and how they see everyone else. And this ignorance, this deliberate miseducation that they have imposed upon their own people allows the same crimes to continue. What most white people in America and Europe believe about their history is not history at all. It's mythology designed to produce a specific kind of person, a person who does not feel guilty, a person who does not feel accountable, a person who does not feel responsible for ever changing anything because they don't think they're doing anything wrong. They're taught that their ancestors were pioneers, their ancestors were explorers and builders of civilization, that they've brought progress and democracy and enlightenment to the world. They hear about the Renaissance, they hear about the Industrial Revolution, they hear about the Age of Discovery, and so forth and so on. And not about enslavement, not about genocide, not about the theft, not about the destruction that their people are responsible for. They're not taught that their prosperity was built on unimaginable suffering. They're not taught that their systems of government, their financial empires, their very sense of national identity are all rooted in exploitation. They don't know about the crimes. They don't know the real legacy of their people. And so they don't change. They don't have to change because they don't even realize what they need to correct. You know, when we look at colonialism, for example, the history that's taught in Western schools is usually an abstraction. colonization is framed as something that it just sort of happened a long time ago, you know, something that was maybe unfortunate, but it was inevitable, and ultimately it represented progress, and there were many beneficial things to come from it. Never mind the millions of Africans who died in the Congo Free State under King Leopold. Most white Americans have never heard of them. Never mind the Bengal famine of 1943, when millions of Indians starved to death due to British policies. They don't even know about it. The fact that the American police forces evolved from slave patrols, they don't know about that either. And they're not any more informed about the ongoing crimes, like the pillage of African resources today, the economic neocolonialism that keeps entire regions of the world impoverished, the exploitation of labor in the global South. These aren't relics of history. That's the present day reality of what your people are doing. But the story that white people are told does not include those realities, or else it packages those realities deceitfully and dishonestly. They package them dishonestly and deceitfully in the past just like they do now. The irony is that when they're confronted with the truth, many of these people will react defensively. You know, I didn't do that. That was in the past. Why should I feel guilty? But this reaction in and of itself reveals how little they're really understanding. It's not about guilt. It's about responsibility. You know, if a person inherits a stolen house, they may not have stolen it themselves, but they still live in it. And if they refuse to acknowledge where that house came from or how it came into their possession, if they insist that that house is rightfully theirs because the crime happened a long time ago, well, then they're complicit because the theft is ongoing. The crime never really stopped. So when people don't know their history, they cannot recognize when history is repeating itself and when history is actually just a continuum into the present. This is why so-called white people in America can watch their government arm and support genocide in Gaza, bomb Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and so on, and actually believe when they say it's for the purpose of security. They don't see the colonial mindset at work. That's why they can see corporations, for example, Western corporations, strip mine Africa for resources and not connect that to the centuries of plunder that came before. This is why they can hear about mass incarceration, about police brutality and systemic racism in the United States, and not understand that these are not new problems. These are just new forms of an old system. These are new manifestations of the same system. And this is why they don't resist, why they don't challenge the structures that continue to exploit and continue to oppress, because they don't even recognize those systems as continuations of the age-old exploitation and oppression. The truth is, white people have been colonized too, not physically, not economically, but psychologically. They've been conditioned to believe in a history that never happened, a history where they were always the heroes, a history where they were never the villains, and where their victims were villains. And as long as they live inside that fiction, well, they'll continue to perpetuate the same crimes of their past, even without realizing it. Which just means that we're not even talking about past crimes. We're talking about ongoing crimes from the past until today. Like I said, it's a continuum. If there's ever going to be any real change, if there's ever going to be any hope for justice, then so-called white people have to actually learn your history. Not the history that makes you feel proud and makes you feel good, that makes you feel comfortable, but real history, the history that makes you uncomfortable, the history that you've denied all this time. And only when white people know their real history, really know it, then maybe they can begin to take the first steps towards repairing the damage that that history caused, the damage that it caused to millions upon millions of people all around the world, including themselves. I mean, Americans, particularly so-called white Americans, you're all like the child of the BTK killer, trying to come to terms with the fact that you were raised by a monster who you always thought was a good and upright man. If Americans in general really understood their history, well, they would know that the United States government has only ever used fear as a weapon against them. And every war that America has ever been involved in was only justified by lies. And every act of domestic repression has only ever been framed as being necessary for the sake of security. They would know that the anti-immigration movements, the anti-Muslim ban and so forth, and all of their surveillance programs, it's not new. It's the same thing. It's just rebranded versions of old crimes. There's absolute continuity. And the only reason that you don't know that is because you have no actual understanding of your own history. Yes, if Americans truly understood their history, they would not be so easily manipulated. They would not be so easily controlled. They would not be so quick to repeat the wrongs of the past, or rather to continue the wrongs of the past. But that's exactly why history is hidden from them. I mean, it's trite but true. There is nothing more powerful than knowledge. There's nothing more dangerous to a corrupt system than a population that remembers. And that's why our mission must be to educate people and to awaken people and to reconnect people with the reality of their own history, the good and the bad. Because when you understand your history, then you'll understand your enemy, because they've been doing the same thing throughout history. And when you understand your enemy, then you'll understand how to defeat them. You'll understand how to oppose them, because you've got an enemy who keeps you in a state of amnesia and a state of fake implanted memories. You know, every time you open your eyes, your enemy is right there in front of you telling you that he's your friend. And because you don't remember anything, you believe him. You understand? The whole country is getting their drink spiked. Everyone in that country is getting roofied. And the one who spikes your drink and the one who abuses you when you're in your numb and unconscious state is the one sitting next to you in the morning when you come to, holding your hand, your protector. Oh, it's insidious. Uncle Sam is a serial killer. The son of Sam's got nothing on Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam is the most prolific, psychopathic, diabolical, demonic mass murderer in history. I mean, look at that poster again, that Uncle Sam poster, that I Want You poster. Think about that. You would think that a character who's supposed to represent the great democratic America would actually be asking the people, what do you want? Not demanding, I want you to go off into the meat grinder of World War I and World War II. Over 500,000 American soldiers killed in Europe and in Asia, thousands of miles from the United States. And then basically some 20-something years later, the same message is repeated. And it's heralded as a great quote. It's heralded as a great statement from John F. Kennedy. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Why? That's not how this works. Talk about gaslighting. Imagine if someone said that in a relationship. You know, I need you to do this and that and the other. And don't even ask me about what you need me to do for you. No, your government, your power structure hates you. But worse than hating you, they don't even respect you. And like I said, a major reason for that is that they have perfected the process of completely wiping out your memory. But the power structure has a memory. So you understand, that's what's really meant by history repeating itself. People think that this is some sort of natural law. No, it's not natural law. It's just the unchanged, consistent behavior of a predatory power structure. It's the law of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Meaning they've been doing the same thing for a very long time. And the system works for them. So they have no reason to change it. And they never will change it until you change. And that's why they want to make sure that you never know what's going on. They want to make sure that you never know what's been going on. And why they keep you basically like a crackhead. I'm serious. Just like a crackhead. The American population, you know, is like a crackhead. Extreme desperation for short-term gratification. Complete memory blackouts. No recall of past consequences of their actions. You know, mood swings, volatile, erratic, can't cope with reality. And you'll sell your dignity just to get some relief. That's why they don't respect you. The same way that a drug dealer doesn't respect a crackhead. Because they can treat you any kind of way. And you'll accept it. You'll accept it as long as you can get a hit of propaganda, a hit of entertainment, a hit of distraction, or what have you. Anything to just help you forget the reality that you live in. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that the condition of a people will not change until they move to change it themselves. And that's why they've neutralized you, because otherwise history might not repeat itself. Because they're the ones who are making history repeat itself by just continuing to do what they've always done. You understand what I'm saying? See, this isn't cyclical, it's constant, uninterrupted, the oppression, the violence, the exploitation, the predation. This is all static, unchanging. You know, you say history repeats itself, it makes it sound like you're talking about a cycle, but it's not a cycle. It's not even a loop. It's a straight line, and it has never swerved, not even once. It's one scene. It's the same scene, year after year, decade after decade, and all they ever do is maybe change the lighting to make it look different, to make it look new, but nothing has changed. But you won't know that as long as you have no memory, as long as you have no actual memory. Not the implanted fake memories of the past that they put in your mind, but a real memory, a real knowledge of history. You'll actually think that you're looking at something new because you don't remember. You don't remember that it's always been this way. And that's why they want you to be so desperate to forget. You know, it's like they say, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So the best way to be able to continue negative and destructive behavior into the future is to try to falsify your history. I mean, most people don't even care about history in America. That's a fact. They're already just ignorant. But the ones who do have an interest in history, they're fed a fictitious history. So they're even worse than someone who's just ignorant. They're even worse than someone who knows nothing. Because it's actually better to just know nothing than to believe something false. The one who doesn't know anything can at least learn. They're at least empty, and information can be put in that emptiness. Whereas someone who already believes something false, thinks he already has the knowledge, thinks he already has the information, and that makes him immune to learning. But then, of course, there's also the fact that the history is so horrific, the history is so brutal, that there's already a built-in incentive to deny or to dismiss it. Because it can be absolutely soul-crushing to try to come to terms with. Like I said, it's like finding out that your parent is the BTK killer. How do you process that? Most people would just reflexively deny horrible realities because they've already built their whole life around the assumption that the reality that they live in is not horrible. You've been drinking blood your whole life thinking it's cherry Kool-Aid. You know, the torch of the Statue of Liberty isn't a guiding light, it's an arsonist's weapon. That's what burned down villages in Vietnam. That's what set fire to Iraq and to Afghanistan. And that's what lit burning crosses all over America. You've been living in an alternative universe. So-called white Americans are like Manchurian candidates, committing or being accomplice to heinous crimes decade after decade after decade, insulated by the hypnotic state of the false version of history that they believe. That's why I've said so repeatedly, your so-called civilization has betrayed you. Your so-called civilization has duped you. They got you to sign off on policies that they told you were for the protection of liberty and justice, but were actually policies for mass murder, crimes against humanity, war crimes, savagery, and enslavement, all for the profit of others. Others who view you as nothing but useful idiots. And now you're incriminated. Now you're accomplices. Now you're taking the fall. But you've got no one to blame but yourselves. But you know what the biggest fraud is? You know what the biggest control strategy is that they use? It's not entertainment. It's not drugs. It's not mass distraction. It's not pornography. It's not even their falsification of history. The biggest strategy that they use to keep you weak and to keep you neutralized is teaching you to hate Islam. I mean, of course, this is couched in the general atheistic secular programming that they impose on you in the West and in America to make you dismissive about religion overall. But their main tool, their main concern, their main focus is to keep you away from Islam and Islam away from you. They teach you that all religions are the same. All religions are nothing but control mechanisms. All religions are man-made. All religions are oppressive and what have you. You know, they poison your whole concept of religion so that you'll just have a default animosity and a default aversion to Islam. And you can't see what they're doing to you. You can't see that this very calculated, very coordinated, and very relentless anti-religious propaganda in films, in television, in academia, in popular discourse, you can't see how all of that is being done very deliberately and in an orchestrated manner. And you can't see that this in and of itself, this is a strategy of control, a mechanism of control. And then the absolutely disciplined, the absolutely systematic and forceful demonization of Islam across all sections of the media. You think they're telling you the truth? You think that they're doing that to help you? Not to make sure that you never will get any help, and not to make sure that you will never help yourself? This is why they're doing it. All they ever do is lie to you. But somehow, for some reason, in the case of Islam, what, you think that they're being honest with you? You know, they've pushed this idea on their people, on the public, that atheism is the most rational and the most realistic, the most reasonable, the most scientific, the most logical, and the most intellectual position that anyone can take. They've pushed that narrative, and they pushed it hard to where people are embarrassed to admit that they're religious. Whatever religion it is, doesn't matter. When the truth is that atheists are the most objectively ludicrous people on the face of the earth. But no one wants to say it. No one wants to point out this obvious reality because it goes against the official narrative. It goes against the official narrative of what smart means. No, this is all being pushed on you just to keep you foolish. It's being pushed on you to keep you neutralized. Just like everything else that they popularize. I mean, think about it. Atheists only believe in what they can see or hear or touch or measure. But human senses are weak. We just see a fraction of the light spectrum. We hear only a small range of sound. We can't detect most of what exists around us. Your so-called empiricism is absurd. The ocean covers 70% of the earth, but 80% of its life is undiscovered. You know, 85% of the universe, they say, is dark matter. Scientists know it's there, but they can't see it. So how can any atheist claim certainty about what exists and what doesn't exist? It's like asking Stevie Wonder if you're wearing a nice color scheme. And you know, they tell you that you don't have to believe in God in order to be a moral person, in order to be a good person, and so on. But you need the government, don't you? You need the government to tell you, don't you? They'll tell you that all religions are man-made, but by the way, you better follow all of these man-made laws that we just wrote down or we'll put you in jail. Okay, you can be moral without religion. Where's the proof? The 20th century was the most atheistic century in human history. And it was also the most viciously violent and inhumane and immoral century in history. Yeah, okay, you can still walk when it's pitch dark, but you can walk a whole lot better in the daylight. You can walk a lot better and you can walk a lot more safely. Honestly, they're making fools of you. And like I said, it's glaringly obvious what religion is the one religion that they most want you to stay away from. And it's not Christianity, and it's not Judaism, and it's not Buddhism, and it's not Hinduism. It's not New Age spiritualism, no. The most vilified, the most reviled, the most slandered, and the most systematically, relentlessly demonized religion is Islam. Slandered and demonized by the power structure that is absolutely committed to keeping you in the dark about everything, about your history and about your present. Why, it couldn't be more obvious. You know, this is where a lot of people hit a wall. They hit a wall in their ability to reason when it comes to Islam. There's people that like to believe that they have successfully extricated themselves from the indoctrination and the programming. Right up until you start talking about Islam. Then the indoctrination and the programming kick in with a fury. You know, there's people who will say, yes, the government lies. Yes, they lied about history. Yes, it's miseducation. Yes, they lie about this and they lie about that. And all the popular narratives and all the discourse are just controlled. Except for the lies that you taught me that I still believe in. When it comes to religion, when it comes to Islam, it's uncanny. You know, you can actually find that rare American, that rare Westerner, who can have a conversation where they express thoughts that actually harvested in their own minds. It's rare, but it can happen. But they're not just regurgitating talking points and prepackaged arguments that were spoon-fed to them by the media. You can do that right up until you start to talk about Islam, and then suddenly you'll find that you're talking to a robot. Suddenly they're just reciting from a script. You know, this programming goes deeper than anything else, and it's glaring. And that tells you that the single most important priority for American control and domination and neutralization of the population is to keep them away from Islam. Which should tell you, if you're a thinking person, if you're an intelligent person, that should tell you that they know that Islam is the single most important key to your liberation. You can reject what I'm saying, that's fine. That's up to you. But just know that this is you wanting for yourself the same thing that the power structure wants for you. And they have never wanted anything for you except for subjugation, marginalization, and neutralization. So you can keep drinking that cherry Kool-Aid if you want, but just don't forget what it really is.
Hey, what's up, folks? How you doing? I hope you're doing super great. Now, today we are ready to learn some more history. And while I listen to the video, I try to take some notes and try to do some research on some concepts that he talks about. And as a person who is interested in history, and research is key in this. And so I tried to look at some things and the arguments that Mr. Shahid Balsam himself gave in regards to this. First, I want to address something. Shahid Balsam's argument that white people are living under forced amnesia suggests that their understanding of history is deliberately erased, manipulated, or rewritten to maintain certain narrative. This is a critical concept in historical studies, which is referred to as historical revisionism, and I think I introduced it in the video, where societies reshape the past to align with the present ideologies. In Western contexts, particularly in the United States, the revisionism takes the form of a fictionalized history that glorifies colonialism, slavery, and white supremacy, while downplaying or outright erasing the violence and oppression upon which these systems were built. The first amnesia Shahid Balsam describes is not an accident, but a product of hegemonic control, a term coined by Antonio Gramsci to explain how ruling classes maintain the power by shaping cultural and intellectual norms. By systematically erasing or distorting history, white people are conditioned to believe in a sanitized version of their past, while European expansion is framed as civilization building rather than conquest, genocide, and exploitation. This collective amnesia ensures that white populations remain disconnected from brutal realities of their ancestors' action, allowing the cycle of racial oppression to persist without confrontation. And remember, when I introduced this video, I asked the question, if you really know the lives of the Vikings, how those white folks were living, right? I mean, their life was so barbaric. I'm not just trying to say, if you're a person who have seen the lives of Vikings and how they lived in the past, their lives were so barbaric. And I think it is the Moors who came and taught them how to bathe, who came and taught them how to. And these are histories that I think we need to take our time and learn, right? So, something that these people are being taught is that their past is perfect, right? And this is what the ruling class, they do what is called the hegemonic control. This is what the ruling class is trying to sell to you. It's trying to tell you that, your past is great. And you as a white person, you brought a lot of things. You brought civilization. You made great things happen in this country. And so with that, they give you an inflated lie. And you believe in that, right? Also, another thing that I came to learn is that Bolton also highlights how American mind resets every morning, meaning that Americans do not retain historical consciousness because they are conditioned to live in a perpetual present. This phenomena is closely related to presentism, a term used by historians to describe the tendency to interpret history through the lens of current events while ignoring historical continuity. American culture, driven by consumerism, media distraction, and fast-paced news cycle, prevents people from deeply engaging with their past. This is further exacerbated in historical illiteracy, a condition where citizens lack even basic understanding of key historical events. Schools play a major role in this by teaching mythological narratives instead of factual history. And I think Shahid Balsam has talked about that. And remember, I said, we need to take our time to re-educate ourselves. Most importantly, to educate the young ones, people who are back behind us, let them know the true history. Because most of all these things that we've been lying are lies. Most of these things that we've been told are all lies. It is about that time. We need to sit down, dig the truth, and learn more about our history. Now, I'll continue. For example, American textbooks often depict founding fathers as champions of freedom while omitting their roles as enslavers. The Civil War is often framed as a battle over states' rights rather than a war fundamentally over slavery. By continuously and informed by the structures of white supremacists that persist today, this ignorance is strategic. It allows injustices to continue unchallenged because people lack historical framework to recognize them as continuations of past oppression. As continuations of past oppressions, the founding fathers, the people that we praise in our textbooks. Yes, talk about Karl Marx, talk about Max Weber, all those people that came with all those concepts. We are seeing them as founding fathers, and we're not asking the question of how was it convenient to them to tell us all these things that they're telling us, right? So, Shade Bolson also claims that black people were also lied to. This is crucial understanding of how oppression functions through epistemic violence, a term coined by postcolonial theorist Gayatri Spivak to describe the way knowledge is controlled and distorted to oppress certain groups. Black history has been deliberately erased, distorted, or rewritten to create a false narrative that disconnects black people from their true legacy. This is evident in how African history is often framed within the Western education system. Rather than being taught about great civilizations of Mali, Songhai, Kemet, that's ancient Egypt, black students are often introduced to their history through the lens of slavery, as if as if their existence began with subjugation. This creates a psychological disconnect, fostering a historical dislocation where black people are denied knowledge of their own heritage and contribution to global civilization. Similarly, the myth of inferiority has been deeply embedded in Western education and media, portraying Africa as a land of perpetual poverty and primitiveness while ignoring its rich historic of scientific, architectural, and philosophical advancement. By distorting black history, the systems ensure that black people struggle with identity erasure, making it difficult for them to mobilize based on shared historical consciousness. And it's true. That's why I'm saying most of us black folks, we need to go sit down and re-educate ourselves on true history. As a continental African, looking at all these things happening on the globe, geopolitics, really, really important for a black person today to keep an eye in everything that is going on around them. Look, after knowing the truth, you'll get to know that there is so much a lot that black people did that was erased. And me seeing my brothers and sisters growing with self-hate because they were never told anything great about them. All they were told were lies. They were told lies, right? The negative lies. And that's the hegemonic control that the elites want you to believe. They want you to believe that what you are told is lies. And they went ahead and also lied to white folks that you know that you are great. And they didn't even tell them how this is inhuman. We'll also talk about the fact about false history. The concept of false history is not just about omitting facts, but about creating an entirely different reality that serves political and economic interest. This process is known as cultural hegemony, where dominant groups control not only physical resources, but also the way people perceive the world. The erasure of history is one of the most effective tools of oppression because it removes the ability to learn from past resistance. For example, if black people were widely taught about the successful slave revolts in Haiti, Jamaica, and the US, they would recognize the power of collective action. If white Americans were taught the full horrors of Jim Crow, redlining, and COINTELPRO, they would be forced to reckon their privilege in ways that could threaten the status quo. Instead, history is presented in a way that neutralizes the past. Slavery is acknowledged, but its economic benefits for white society are downplayed. Civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. are celebrated, but his radical and anti-capitalist and anti-war stances are erased. By controlling which parts of history are remembered and which are forgotten, the system ensures that society remains structured in a way that benefits those in power. Is that a lie? Or is that true? Let's agree to disagree. Also, on the same note, Shahid Balsan also talks about what is called historical conditioning, which is used as a tool of global domination. When an entire population is raised on historical fiction rather than truth, they become easy to manipulate politically and economically. Americans, for example, have been taught to see their nations as a beacon of democracy and freedom. Despite its long history of imperialism, genocide, and systemic oppression, these nations' myth allows the US government to justify their interventions, coup, and military actions abroad under the pretense of spreading democracy, when in reality they are enforcing economic and geopolitical dominance. Similarly, white populations are taught to believe that their privilege is the result of hard work and cultural superiority rather than centuries of colonial plunder, forced labor, and systemic disenfranchisement of other races. This creates a false moral high ground that prevents accountability and perpetuates cycles of exploitation. Another great thing that he talks about is talk about weaponization of historical ignorance, and that's where weaponization of historical ignorance. That's where the elites are banked on. They know very well that people don't like to do research. People will not try find the truth. And now they are leveraging on this to still continue to lie to you for you not to get to know the truth. Both black and white populations are strategically misinformed for different reasons. White people are taught to forget in order to maintain privilege without guilt, while black people are taught lies in order to suppress their sense of power and agency. This creates a distorted historical consciousness where oppressed and oppressor both function within a system of false narrative. The result is a society where real history is buried beneath layers of propaganda, making systemic changes nearly impossible. However, the antidote to this historical reclamation, the antidote to this is what is called historical reclamation, a process where oppressed groups actively seek out and restore their true histories. This is why independent black scholars, grassroots educators, and alternative media platforms play such critical role in breaking the cycle of forced amnesia. One last thing that I would like to say that Shahid Bolson also talks about is Shahid Bolson's argument is not just about past events, it's about present and future. If history continues to be erased or manipulated, future generations will remain trapped in the same circles of oppression. The struggle for liberation is not just about economics or politics, it's about the battle for historical truth. Recognizing the deliberate deception in mainstream narratives is the first step towards dismantling the systems that rely on ignorance to function. The more people learn and reclaim their histories, the harder it becomes for these false realities to persist. This is why the fight against historical amnesia is one of the most important battles of our lifetime, especially to black folks. Hello guys, this represents Hygienic Stories, and if you find values in the commentary that I make, please consider liking the video, share, subscribe. For those who want to buy me a coffee of tea, you can, a cup of coffee, you can check my Cash App account and you can donate to me through my Cash App account. I'll definitely appreciate. For those who want to send me some super thanks, I definitely appreciate. For those all who are supporting me on my channel, I'll take this time to thank you so much for doing this to me. But until then, as you know, these are presented Hygienic Stories, and I'm hoping to see you on my next video. Until then, peace, love, and harmony. Salute.